Hello, what is up guys? Today I'm going to be ranking every Forza Motorsport 2 track, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm not going to be really including the DLC tracks because I never got to get those tracks. And just to keep you in mind, this is all based on my opinions, and even though there's a lot of content that was removed from this game, it's still a pretty fun game. So yeah, let's get started guys. So, for my least favorite track in the entire game, it definitely is Nissan Speedway, because in reality, if you think about it, it's just the extra layout for the track Sunset Pensolia, and this track is kind of boring to be honest, because back then you didn't have that much content for like Forza games, and it didn't work quite well for this game, and it was quite boring. So yeah, this is why I don't really like this track. So yeah, I prefer other tracks in the game. At number 12, we have the snake tracks. Now, first of all, this track overall has like a billion layouts, and extremely confusing to figure out like which ones are good, which ones are bad. But I'm not gonna be really talking about it because it's way too confusing. But like the whole track overall, one thing I do definitely like about it has a lot of challenging turns, which is quite nice. But besides that, it's kind of boring, and it kind of feels dull in some way, and it's like not really special. So this is why I'm not a huge fan of this track. At number 11, we have New York Circuit. This track definitely has a cool aesthetic and a cool vibe to it, but besides that, it's not really that special, because all it really is, it has a few turns and like few ways to drive, but that's pretty much it. And also this track is kind of bad in this game and Motorsport 3, because the Forza Motorsport 1 version of this track had way more layouts and it was way more fun to play, but then it was removed from this game for some reason, so this is why it's not that good. Number 2, I have Sabrine track. Now, this track, I do definitely like that. It's pretty big, and you do have a lot of corners to drive around this track, which is quite nice. But in my opinion, it's not the best track, because if you really think about it, it doesn't work that well for all car classes, because this track, it usually has small worlds and it causes a lot of crashes and crowdiness, which is not that great, and overall it's kind of okay in my opinion. Number 9, we have Sunset Pensolia. Now this track is so much better than the Nissan Speedway, even though it's based off the track Nissan Speedway, which I talked about earlier. This track is a lot of fun to play for me, because this track, I do have a lot of turns and a lot of challenges stuff to do in this track, and it is quite fun, and also it looks really good for its time, especially back then. Number 8, we have Laguna Seca. Now, I'm not gonna be really talking about that much in this video, because you probably already know what this track is. It's pretty famous, but it's pretty fun to play because it offers a lot of turns, a lot of hills, and interesting scenery. It is pretty fun, and especially because this game, it looked really amazing, especially for its time. So yeah, this is considered a classic. Number 7, we have Silverstone. Now this is a pretty fun track because it is quite big, and sure, it doesn't have that much hills, and like it only has like one surface. Even then, it's a pretty fun track, and what's really interesting is that this track also has a lot of layouts, which is quite nice, and it quite works well for a lot of the cars in this game. And one thing that is really interesting about this track, specifically in those older Forza games, including this, is that the layout is extremely different, because like a few years ago they rebuilt this track or remade it in some way, and then they changed it, and back then it was like this. So this is definitely an interesting way of this track being played, because it's considered like a older version of Silverstone, or like a historical type of Silverstone, which is pretty unique and kind of fun to play. And number 6, we have Road Atlanta. Now this track, it was pretty fun and pretty new at the time, because Even though I'm not a huge fan of this track in the newer games, it was really fun the older ones because back then since you only had like 8 players on each the online and career mode, it was perfect pace for it compared to newer games, which causes like traffic and crashes and all that other stuff, which is why I don't like it in the newer games. But this game, it was pretty fun to play and it kind of looks better in my opinion, even the older ones. So this is why I enjoy it in the older games. At number 5, we have Mugello Circuit. Now, this track, it was the first Forza game to include this track. Now, this is not my favorite track by any means, but still it offers a lot of turns. It also offers a lot of hills and a lot of challenging turns, which is quite nice. And the view is pretty cool and has a unique scenery to it. But one thing I do like about this track though is that it's not a very popular track and it's not very popular in racing games. So this is quite more of like a obscure and unique type track to it. Even though it's used in real life, it's not that popular in racing games. And I'm glad we have like this one to race on, which is pretty fun and interesting. Number 4, it's another really popular track. It's the Suzuka track. You probably know about this, but I do enjoy this track because it has a lot of turns and a lot of bridges and a lot of stuff to do in this track. It's pretty fun. And what's nice about this track, specifically in this game, is that they do have the full layouts, which is pretty cool. And it's also the Forza game to even add this track, which is pretty cool. And it works quite well for a lot of cars in this game, and it's pretty fun to drive on. And again, this track is really fun to play, and it's considered a classic. So number 3, this might be controversial, but it definitely is Toshiba Circuit. Now, I do enjoy this track because this track is pretty fun to play, especially in those older Forza games, because you don't have this track in the newer games. And it quite wouldn't work well in the newer games because in the newer Forza games, you would have to like drive this track in like the faster cars, and it kind of ruined the vibe for me personally. But in this game, it makes sense because you mainly would drive like Japanese cars or like smaller car type classes, which is pretty fun and it works really well for it. Also, back then you had 8 players, so this was like the perfect pacing for it. And overall, back then it felt special to drive on this track compared to the newer games. At number 2, we have Nürburgring, the Nordschleife version. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But I really like this track because it's like one of the biggest tracks, probably in the Forza history, if not the world's biggest track. But I really enjoyed this track because you obviously know it has a lot of turns, it's really challenging, and it's really huge. The only thing I'll say I don't like about this track in this game is that it's less detailed. They don't have the Grand Prix version unlike Forza Motorsport 4 and later. And what sucks about this is that they don't really offer it in the career mode because it sucks because this is a masterpiece. But besides that, it's a really good track and it's one of the best things they ever added to this game. So at number 1, we have Maple Valley. Now this track was very good because this track back then they stripped out a lot of the content from older Forza games. They removed Fujimi Kaido, Pacific Shipyards, and a lot more stuff. So this was a really good replacement, and it's one of the best fictional tracks, specifically in this game, because the graphics look absolutely amazing. The view looks breathtaking, especially if it's time. And this track overall was really fun to play, and it was extremely unique and different compared to older tracks. And it's really fun. It works well for car classes. So this is why this is my favorite track in this game. But this is going to be pretty much it for this video. Let me know if I should do other stuff like this. But as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and let me know if I should do other stuff like that. But as always, peace out, guys.